It began with the sound of rain against glass. The kind of rain that didn't wash away the pain. It only made it heavier, slower, more echoing. Inside the grand mansion on the hill, a woman sat by the window, clutching her stomach as the thunder rolled. Her name was Elena, and inside her, a heartbeat was growing. The heartbeat of innocence, of love, of hope. But that night, all she could hear was another heartbeat, her own, trembling in fear. She was married to Adrian Stone, one of the richest men in the city. To the world, Adrian was charm and perfection, a self-made millionaire, a man of taste and style, whose smile could buy trust and whose money could buy silence. But behind those polished marble walls, Elena knew the truth. She had seen the beast that lived beneath the expensive suit, the rage, the insecurity, and the obsession with control. That night, she had done something unforgivable in his eyes. She had spoken up. "You can't buy love, Adrian," she had said quietly, her hand on her swollen belly. "And you can't break me anymore." He had turned to her, eyes blazing like fire behind ice. And with that, her nightmare began. Before we go deeper into this heart-wrenching story, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Spark, where every story ignites your emotions, your strength, and your soul. When Adrian's first strike came, it wasn't physical. It was with words, sharp, cruel, calculated. He called her ungrateful, foolish, weak. He told her she was nothing without him. But words were never enough for a man who needed control. Soon, anger became a habit, and habit became a weapon. Elena would count every insult, every bruise. Every night he came home drunk, furious over something she never caused. She would tell herself she was staying for the baby, that maybe he would change when he became a father. That hope was her only light in a house that had turned to darkness. Adrian's empire grew, but his soul decayed. The more power he gained, the more violent he became behind closed doors. He was obsessed with appearances, the parties, the reputation, the press. Elena was his trophy, and when she stopped shining, he punished her for it. He had no idea who she really was. He didn't know that the woman he humiliated came from power greater than his. The daughter of Richard Hale, the billionaire CEO of Hale Enterprises, one of the most influential figures in the world of business. Elena had chosen to keep that truth from Adrian when they first met. She had wanted love, not fear. She had wanted to be loved for her heart, not her father's wealth. And so she hid her last name. She lived under his cruelty in silence, protecting her unborn child, waiting for the right moment to escape. That moment came the day he crossed the final line. It was a lavish evening, chandeliers glowing like frozen stars, music echoing through the ballroom, guests laughing with champagne in hand. Adrian was celebrating another deal, another empire expansion. Elena, dressed in a pale blue gown, sat quietly, trying to endure the pain that rippled through her body. She was 8 months pregnant, exhausted and fragile. When she accidentally spilled wine on his suit, everything stopped. The laughter, the music. The room fell into silence as he turned toward her, eyes filled with humiliation and rage.
"Do you know how much this cost?"
He hissed. "I'm sorry, Adrian." Before she could finish, he struck her, right there, in front of everyone. A pregnant woman, his wife, the mother of his child. The sound of the slap echoed louder than the thunder outside. She stumbled, clutching her stomach, tears streaming down her face. The guests froze, too shocked, too scared, too cowardly to move. Only one person smiled, the woman in red beside Adrian, his mistress. Adrian grabbed a whip from the decor stand, a cruel prop from his art collection, and with wild fury raised it. "You've embarrassed me for the last time," he shouted, and the whip came down again and again. 300 times was the count Elena would later whisper in the hospital bed. 300 lashes, 300 pieces of her soul torn apart. But fate, as cruel as it can be, sometimes brings justice in the most unexpected way. As she lost consciousness, one of the guests secretly called an ambulance, and another called someone far more dangerous, Richard Hale. When the old man arrived at the hospital, his face was stone cold. For the world, he was the untouchable CEO, powerful, wise, respected. But that night, he was a father whose heart had been shattered. He saw his daughter lying pale and lifeless, her body covered in bruises, her arms trembling around her unborn child. "Dad," she whispered through tears, "please don't do anything. Just protect my baby." He nodded slowly, but his silence was more terrifying than any promise. Days passed. Elena survived barely. The baby, a girl, was born early but healthy. Adrian never showed up. He thought she had died. He was already planning to erase the scandal with money. But what he didn't know was that Richard had already moved his pieces. When Adrian entered his office one morning, men in black suits were waiting. The media was there too. Hundreds of reporters, flashing cameras, microphones ready. On every screen, every channel played footage and audio recordings from that night. The screaming, the violence, the truth. Someone had leaked everything. Within hours, Adrian Stone's empire collapsed. His bank accounts were frozen. His partners withdrew. His name became poison. But the greatest blow came when he was summoned to court. Sitting across from him was Richard Hale, calm, composed, and deadly. "Do you remember the woman you thought was beneath you?" Richard said. "She's my daughter. And everything you built is now gone." Adrian's jaw trembled. For the first time, he realized the scale of his mistake. He had beaten not just a woman, he had tried to destroy an angel protected by power he could never comprehend. When the verdict came, the world watched. Adrian Stone, once the city's most admired millionaire, was sentenced for abuse, attempted murder, and assault. His fortune went into Elena's name, not because she wanted revenge, but because she wanted to build something good out of her pain. Months later, Elena stood by the ocean with her newborn in her arms. The waves whispered softly, carrying away the echoes of her past. Her father stood beside her, silent, proud. "You were right," she said quietly. "Love can't be bought, but courage can be found." Her daughter stirred in her arms, tiny fingers curling around her mother's hand, a promise of a brighter future. Elena opened her own foundation for women, the Hale Haven, a refuge for those who had suffered in silence like she once did. Her story became a light for others, proof that no pain lasts forever and no cruelty goes unanswered. If you're feeling moved by Elena's story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Soul Spark, your home for real, emotional, and powerful stories that remind us of strength, justice, and hope. And as the sun set that evening, Elena smiled. Her scars would always remain, but they were no longer signs of weakness. They were proof of survival. Adrian's empire of fear had fallen, but her empire of compassion had begun. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is simply healing louder than the people who tried to break you.